I learned to kill a man at 800 yards before I learned how to grieve. 22 years in the court taught me wind speed, breathing control, and patience. But standing in the rain at Pinewood Cemetery, staring at two graves, one large, one impossibly small, none of that training meant a damn thing. My sister Morgan was in the ground, and so was her baby. A baby I never got to meet. A baby that never took a single breath. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. The flight home from Kandahar took 14 hours. I spent every second of it picturing Morgan's face when I surprised her at the door. She was 8 months pregnant last time we video called. She had this glow about her, this excitement. She kept saying, "Hunter, you're gonna be the coolest uncle. This kid's gonna think you're a superhero." I landed at Dallas-Fort Worth expecting a welcome home party. Instead, my phone had 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. When I finally called back, a flat voice answered. Colton County Sheriff's Department. My stomach dropped. "This is Staff Sergeant Hunter Reeves," I said. "Someone from this number has been trying to reach me." There was a pause. Papers shuffling. Then, "Sir, this is Deputy Lang. I'm very sorry to inform you that your sister, Morgan Reeves, was involved in a fatal incident 3 days ago. We've been trying to contact next of kin." Fatal incident. Not accident. Not tragedy. Incident. I drove straight through the night from Dallas to Colton Springs, a nowhere town in East Texas where Morgan had moved 2 years ago for a fresh start. She never told me what she was starting fresh from. I should have asked more questions. I should have called more. But I was busy being a ghost in the mountains of Afghanistan, and she was busy building a life I knew nothing about. When I pulled up to her house on Maple Street, yellow crime scene tape was still stretched across the porch. The windows were dark. Bullet holes peppered the front door. 12 of them. I counted every single one. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine off, rain hammering the roof. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something else. Something cold and surgical that I recognized from deployments. It was the feeling I got right before pulling a trigger. A patrol car pulled up behind me. The door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, mid-50s, with a silver badge glinting on his chest and a confidence that felt too comfortable. Sheriff Victor Crane. I'd seen his face on Morgan's Facebook once. She'd been at some town barbecue, standing next to him in a photo. I hadn't thought much of it then. "You must be Hunter," he said, walking up to my window. His voice was smooth. "Practiced. I'm real sorry for your loss, son." Morgan was a sweet girl. Wrong place, wrong time. I didn't answer. I just stared at the bullet holes. "It was a robbery gone bad," he continued. 2 men broke in looking for cash. She fought back. Things escalated. 12 shots, I said quietly. "Excuse me. 12 rounds. Through the door. That's not panic fire. That's execution." His jaw tightened. Just for a second. Then the smile came back. "I understand you're upset, but we've got this handled. The suspects fled the county. We're working with state police." I turned to look at him then. Really look. His uniform was pressed. His boots were shined. And on his left wrist was a brand new Tag Heuer watch. The kind that costs more than a small-town sheriff makes in 6 months. "Where'd you get the watch?" I asked. His smile faltered. "That's an odd question. Humor me. Gift from my wife. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a county to run." He tipped his hat and walked back to his car. But I saw it. The nervous tick. The way his hand went to his sidearm for just a moment, like he was making sure it was still there. I waited until he drove off. Then I got out and walked around the house. The back door was unlocked. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Morgan's coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter. Her shoes were by the door. The nursery was half finished. Pale yellow walls, a crib in the corner, stuffed animals stacked on a shelf. And then I saw it. In the corner of the living room, near the couch, partially hidden under the edge of the rug. A baby rattle. It was crushed, like someone had stepped on it. But the police tape was still up. The scene was supposed to be secured. They missed it. Or they ignored it. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my palm. It was pink. Morgan had told me she was having a girl. She was going to name her Emma. I stood there in that silent house, rain drumming on the roof, holding a crushed rattle that belonged to a child who would never grow up. And for the first time since I joined the Marines, I didn't think about honor or duty or rules of engagement. I thought about 12 bullet holes. I thought about a sheriff with a new watch. And I thought about wind speed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a motel room on the edge of town with the crushed rattle on the nightstand, staring at it like it might speak. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Morgan's face. Not from our last video call. From when we were kids. She was 7 and I was 12, and I'd promised her I'd always protect her. Some promises you can't keep from 8,000 miles away. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to see her. Not a closed casket. Not a memory. I needed to see what they did to my sister. The Colton County morgue was attached to the back of the hospital, a squat brick building that smelled like bleach and something worse underneath. I walked in and asked for the medical examiner. The receptionist looked at me like I'd asked to see God. "Sir, you can't just walk in and I'm her brother. Staff Sergeant Hunter Reeves. I'm listed as next of kin." She hesitated, then picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, a man in scrubs pushed through the double doors. I recognized him immediately. Adrian Cole. We'd played football together in high school before I enlisted, and he went to med school. "Hunter," he said quietly. His face was drawn, older than it should have been. "I heard you were back. I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry. I need to see her." He glanced back at the doors. "Hunter, I don't think that's a good idea. The autopsy's done. The sheriff's office already signed off on the report. I don't care what they signed off on. She's my sister." Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Follow me. But what I'm about to show you, it stays between us." He led me through a hallway that felt too long, too cold. We stopped at a metal door. He swiped his badge and pushed it open. Inside was a wall of steel drawers. He pulled one out. Morgan's body was covered with a white sheet. Adrian hesitated before pulling it back. "Just prepare yourself." Nothing prepares you. Her face was untouched. Peaceful almost. Like she was sleeping. But when Adrian pulled the sheet lower, I saw it. Her stomach. What was left of it? 12 holes. But they weren't scattered. They were grouped. Tight. Precise. "This wasn't random fire," Adrian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They aimed for the womb. Every single shot." My hands clenched into fists. I felt that coldness again. That surgical focus. The official report says it was 2 shooters. Panicked robbery. But Hunter. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this in her jeans pocket. It didn't make it into the chain of evidence. I don't know why, but I think you need to see it." He handed it to me. I held it up to the light. It was an ultrasound photo. The kind they give you at the doctor's office. A grainy black and white image of a baby. Emma. And in the bottom corner, written in blue ink, were 2 initials. VC Victor Crane. I stared at it. My breathing slowed. Everything slowed. "Morgan never mentioned who the father was," Adrian said carefully. "But about 6 months ago, I saw her leaving the sheriff's ranch late at night. I didn't think much of it then. People have their business. But now," I looked up at him. "You're telling me the sheriff got my sister pregnant. I'm telling you what I saw. And I'm telling you those bullet holes aren't consistent with the story he's selling." He paused. "There's something else." Toxicology came back clean. No drugs. No alcohol. But there were defensive wounds on her hands. She fought back. Hard. I folded the ultrasound photo carefully and slid it into my jacket pocket. "Does anyone else know about this?" I asked. "Just you and me. And I'm risking my job even showing you." Adrian met my eyes. "Hunter, whatever you're thinking, be smart. This town belongs to Victor Crane. His wife's family has money. Real money. The kind that makes people disappear." "People already disappeared," I said. 2 of them. I left the morgue and drove to the edge of town, to a clearing in the woods where Morgan and I used to camp as kids. I sat on the hood of my truck and pulled out the ultrasound again. I stared at those 2 initials. Victor Crane had gotten my sister pregnant. And when she wouldn't disappear quietly, someone made sure she never talked. 12 bullets. One for each week she had left. I pulled out my phone and started searching. Public records. Property deeds. Marriage licenses. It didn't take long to find her. Giselle Crane, née Harlow. Daughter of Senator Raymond Harlow. Married to Victor Crane for 18 years. No children. I wondered if she knew. I wondered if she cared. And then I wondered something else. What if she was the one who pulled the trigger? The next morning, I drove straight to the sheriff's office with the ultrasound picture in my pocket and my sister's ruined body burned into my brain. I wasn't thinking strategy. I wasn't thinking about how deep this went. I just knew I couldn't walk around pretending any of this was normal. Colton County Sheriff's Department sat right on Main Street, wedged between a bank and a bakery. From the outside, it looked like something out of a postcard. Brick walls, white trim, flag flapping in the breeze. Inside, it felt like something else entirely. The second I walked through the glass doors, conversation stopped. Deputies glanced up from their desks, then quickly looked back down. Phones rang a little too long before anyone answered. A TV in the corner played the news on mute. All I heard was air conditioning and the creak of leather as a man shifted in his chair. A deputy with a buzz cut and a nameplate that read Blake pushed back from his desk and stood up. He had that gym-built body, tight uniform, the whole "I write people tickets for fun" energy. "Can I help you?" he asked, even though he already knew who I was. "I'm here to file a complaint," I said, "and to request a full investigation into the death of my sister, Morgan Reeves." He blinked slowly, like he was counting to 3 in his head. "The case is already classified as a home invasion homicide. Ongoing investigation. Sheriff's working with state police. You can leave your contact info. I'm not asking what you classified it as. I'm telling you I have reason to believe your boss is involved." A chair scraped behind me. Another deputy stood up. A third one leaned forward. The air in the room tightened. Blake's smile was thin. "You should watch what you say in here, sir." I took a step closer. "You should watch who you protect." A door at the back of the bullpen opened. Sheriff Victor Crane stepped out wearing the same confident expression, the same expensive watch. His eyes flicked over the room, landing on me like we were continuing a conversation from yesterday. "Morning, Sergeant Reeves," he said. "I see you've met my team." "Not here for a social call," I replied. "I just came from the morgue." He cocked his head. "That's so. I saw the wounds. All 12 of them. I saw the pattern. For just a heartbeat, something moved behind his eyes. Then it was gone." "Medical details are confidential, Sergeant," he said calmly. "The examiner shouldn't have let you in there. I'll have to talk to him about that." "You do that," I said. "While you're at it, maybe explain why your initials are on the back of my sister's ultrasound." One of the deputies swore under his breath. Someone knocked a stapler off a desk. Crane didn't move. He didn't blink. "You've been overseas a long time," he said. "You might not understand how rumors work in a small town. Your sister was a troubled woman. She kept bad company. That doesn't mean every stray piece of paper you find is some grand conspiracy." "Is that what you call a baby now?" I asked. "A stray piece of paper?" His jaw flexed. "I'm going to give you some advice, son. Grief can make a man see things that aren't there. You just lost your sister and your potential niece. I get that. But turning your pain into wild accusations, that's not going to bring them back. It's just going to make your life harder." There it was. The polite threat. "Are you refusing to take my statement?" I asked. "I'm telling you there is an active investigation," he said. "You interfering will only hurt the case. Go back to your motel. Let us do our job." I looked around the room. Not one deputy would meet my eyes. Not one. It was like everyone had decided, silently, that the safest thing they could do was pretend I wasn't there. I turned and walked out before I did something they'd never forgive me for. Outside, Main Street looked perfectly normal. People pushing strollers. Old men drinking coffee on a bench. A woman walking a dog. But when I stepped onto the sidewalk, a couple crossing the street saw me and turned around. A guy sweeping outside the barber shop froze, then ducked back inside. Word travels fast in a small town, and so does fear. I needed someone who wasn't owned by Victor Crane, someone who actually knew Morgan. I thought about her old social media posts, the handful of names she mentioned more than once. One popped into my head immediately. Ivy. Morgan had posted photos of them together at the park, at baby stores, laughing over milkshakes. My person, she'd captioned one of them. Couldn't do this without her. I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found Ivy's full name in an old tag, Ivy Malone. A quick search gave me an address on the south side of town. Her apartment building was a tired-looking two-story complex with peeling paint and rusted railings. A "For Rent" sign hung crooked near the entrance. I walked up the stairs to 2B and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Ivy, my name is Hunter. I'm Morgan's brother. I heard movement then. A drawer closing. A zipper. Soft footsteps. The door cracked open just enough for one green eye to study me through the gap. Hunter, she said, voice wary. Yeah. She opened the door wider. She was in her late 20s, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing an oversized t-shirt and jeans. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, half the apartment was in boxes. You look just like her, Ivy whispered. Around the eyes. Can I come in? She looked past me down the hallway, like she expected someone to be lurking there. Then she stepped aside. Make it quick. The apartment smelled like coffee and cardboard. Clothes were piled on the couch. Pictures had been taken off the walls, leaving pale rectangles where they used to hang. You moving? I asked. She gave a humorless laugh. That's one word for it. I stayed standing. I just came from the morgue, I said. And the sheriff's office. I think you already know their version of what happened. Home invasion, she said flatly. 2 men. Wrong place, wrong time. Morgan fought back. They shot through the door. You believe that? She stared at the floor for a long second. I believed it for about 10 minutes, she said. Then I remembered who your sister was. Morgan didn't open the door for strangers late at night. She barely opened the door for delivery guys. She was paranoid about the baby. She used to make me wash my hands like a surgeon before I touched her belly. So what do you think happened? I asked. She walked to a box on the table, opened it, then closed it again, like she'd forgotten what she was looking for. You really don't know, do you? If I knew, I wouldn't be here. Ivy rubbed her temples. When she looked up, there was something like guilt in her eyes. Morgan told me not to tell you, she said. She kept saying, Hunter's got enough on his plate. Let him stay clean. Tell me what? She was seeing someone, Ivy said quietly. For about a year. Someone she shouldn't have been seeing. I didn't say anything. I just waited. It started after her divorce, she continued. Kyle walked out, left her with all the debt, all the shame. Everybody in town took his side, because his family has money and hers didn't. Then Victor stepped in, offered her a job, some help with the bills. Started coming by to check on her. One thing turned into another. My chest felt tight. She was involved with the sheriff. It wasn't like she set out to wreck a marriage, Ivy said quickly. She hated that he was married. She hated herself for it. She tried to break it off a dozen times. But he kept telling her he loved her, that he was going to leave his wife after the election. Said he just needed a little more time. And then she got pregnant. She was terrified, Ivy said. At first she thought it would push him to finally leave. Then he changed. Started talking about how this would ruin his career, his marriage, his whole life. Told her to handle it quietly. An abortion. Ivy nodded. She refused. She said that baby was the first good thing to happen to her in years. She said she didn't care if he stayed or left. She was keeping her child. My hands were trembling now. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. Did he threaten her? You ever seen Victor when he doesn't get what he wants? Ivy asked. He has this way of talking that feels like a hug until you realize he's choking you. He told her she'd be making life very difficult for everyone. That people get hurt when they don't listen. I thought about 12 shots, all in the same place. I thought about the sheriff's expensive watch and his wife's political family. Why are you packing? I asked. Who scared you? Nobody had to, Ivy said. Not really. The night after it happened, deputies came by. They didn't ask me what I knew. They told me what I knew. They said it was a robbery. They said if I started stirring up drama or spreading wild stories, the sheriff's office would have questions about some pills I took from the clinic 2 years ago when I was broke and desperate. Blackmail. She shrugged helplessly. I can't fight these people, Hunter. I don't have a uniform or a rifle or 22 years of training. All I have is a used car and bad credit. So yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to my aunt's place in Oklahoma. Somewhere with no Cranes, no Harlows, no Colton County. I walked to the window and looked out over the parking lot. A black SUV rolled slowly past the building, then circled back around. Same vehicle I'd seen parked across from my motel that morning. You were the only person Morgan trusted, I said. If you leave, her story leaves with you. She swallowed. You think staying will change what happened to her? I think staying is the only thing that scares them. For a moment, something like defiance flickered across her face. Then it went out. I'm not you, she said quietly. I'm not built for war. I couldn't argue with that. I also couldn't blame her. I headed for the door. When I reached it, she spoke again. Hunter. I looked back. If you go after him, he won't fight fair, she said. He never does. I know. I left her there, surrounded by boxes and ghosts, and drove back to the motel. The sun was starting to set, throwing long shadows across the parking lot. That same black SUV was parked 2 spaces down from my room, empty. No plates on the front. Windows tinted dark. Every instinct I had screamed at me. I unlocked my door and pushed it open. The room looked like a hurricane had gone through it. Mattress flipped. Drawers pulled out. My duffel bag spilled across the floor, clothes scattered, toiletries crushed. The lamp was broken. The bathroom mirror cracked. They hadn't stolen anything. My passport was still there. My cash was still tucked inside my boot. This wasn't a robbery. It was a message. On the pillow, where my head would have been if I'd come back earlier, there was a single sheet of motel stationery. 4 words, written in neat block letters. Leave town or join them. I stood in the middle of that wrecked room, holding that note, and felt something in me settle. Not anger. Not rage. Something colder. A decision. They thought they were warning me off. All they did was confirm what I already knew. This wasn't just about my sister anymore. It was about the whole rotten skeleton this town was built on. And I wasn't going anywhere. I stood in the wreckage of my motel room, the note from Sheriff Crane's goons still in my hand. Leave town or join them. They thought it was a threat. To me, it was a confirmation. A confession. You don't send attack dogs to tear apart a man's room unless you have something to hide. And whatever Victor Crane was hiding, it was big enough to kill my sister for. I picked up the pieces of the broken lamp, setting them neatly on the desk. I folded my scattered clothes. I put the mattress back on the bed. Cleaning the chaos brought a strange sense of clarity. The grieving brother was gone. Staff Sergeant Hunter Reeves was back on duty. This town was no longer my home. It was an active theater of operations. The sheriff wasn't a corrupt cop. He was the primary target. I left the motel without checking out, leaving the key on the clean counter. I drove my truck to a self-storage unit on the outskirts of town and paid cash for a month. Inside, I opened the false bottom of my deployment footlocker. My service pistol was still there, but that wasn't what I needed. I pulled out my optics kit, a set of high-frequency listening devices, and my ghillie suit. My life in the shadows. By sundown, I was gone, melted into the piney woods that bordered the east side of town. The sheriff's ranch wasn't hard to find. It was a sprawling, arrogant piece of property with a white fence and a long gravel driveway. A fortress built on dirty money. I found my spot 200 yards out, on a small rise obscured by thick underbrush. A perfect observation post. I set up my spotting scope and settled in for the night. The house was lit up like a Christmas tree. I watched Victor and his wife, Giselle, move through the windows, shadows playing out a life my sister had paid for with her own. They weren't acting like a couple in crisis. They were hosting a party. Cars pulled up the driveway. Men in suits and women in dresses laughed on the porch. From this distance, They looked like any other wealthy, powerful people. But I knew better. I was watching monsters. The real work began the next day. Victor's routine was predictable. He left the ranch at 7:30 a.m. every morning in his black county-issued SUV. He drove to the same diner, ordered the same coffee, and sat in the same booth for exactly 20 minutes before heading to the office. On the third day, I made my move. I was waiting in the diner's parking lot, hidden between a delivery truck and a dumpster. As he went inside, I had my window. 2 minutes. That's all I'd need. I moved low and fast, staying in the blind spots of the security cameras. I reached his SUV, pulled out the magnetic listening device, no bigger than a quarter, and slapped it up under the passenger side dashboard, deep in the wiring. It was a clean plant. No trace. I was back in position before he even got his coffee. For the rest of the day, I sat in my OP, listening. Most of it was garbage. Traffic stops, dispatch calls, small-town chatter. But late that afternoon, as Victor was driving home, a call came through on his private cell. The audio was crystal clear. "We have a problem," a gruff voice said. No greeting. "Calm down, Felix," Victor replied. "What is it?" "Felix." I recognized the name. Judge Felix Preston, the man who signed off on every warrant in Colton County. "The brother is still in town," the judge said. He went to the office. Started making noise about the ultrasound. "He's a grieving soldier with a hero complex," Victor scoffed. "He'll run out of steam and go home." "I'm not so sure," Felix said. "I ran his service record. This isn't some desk jockey, Victor. He's Tier 1. Special Operations. A scout sniper. They call his unit the Ghosts. This is not a man who runs out of steam." There was a long silence on the line. I could hear the hum of the road under the SUV's tires. "He doesn't have anything," Victor finally said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "He has his sister's body and a grudge," Felix shot back. "And if he starts digging into our other business, if he finds out what Morgan really knew." "She didn't know anything," Victor snapped. "She knew enough to get herself killed." Felix's voice was strained. "She was asking questions about the rehab center, the cash flow, the shell corporations. She was a loose end, Victor, and you promised me you handled it." My blood ran cold. The rehab center, a new facility built on the edge of town, funded by a generous donation from Senator Harlow's foundation. It wasn't about the affair. It was about money. Morgan hadn't just been a romantic liability. She had stumbled onto their entire criminal enterprise. "I did handle it," Victor said, his voice low and menacing. "And I'll handle the brother, too." He hung up. I sat there in the silence, the judge's words echoing in my ears. She knew about the rehab center. My sister wasn't killed in a moment of passion. She was silenced. A few minutes later, another sound came over the wire. It was Victor, talking to someone in the car with him. A deputy he must have picked up. "Blake. That brother of hers," Blake said. "What are we going to do about him?" "We're going to watch him," Victor replied. His voice was different now. Cold. Calculated. "I made a mistake. I underestimated him. He's just one guy," Blake said. And then came the line that stopped my heart. "Yeah," Victor said, his voice a dead whisper. "One guy? I should have checked his files sooner. I didn't know he was a ghost sniper." For 2 days, I lived in my headphones. I listened to Victor order his deputies to shadow my every move. I listened as he assured Judge Preston that the laundry was still running smooth through the rehab center. I learned the whole operation. Federal grants were flowing into the center for patients who didn't exist, and the money was flowing out, washed clean, into offshore accounts controlled by the judge and the senator. Morgan had figured it out. She'd been working at the center's front desk part-time. She saw the ghost patients. She saw the discrepancies. And she made the mistake of confronting the father of her child about it. It was time to end this. I had enough audio evidence to bury them all. Conspiracy, murder, money laundering. But I couldn't just walk into the local FBI field office. The judge had reach. I needed to go higher. I reached out to an old contact from my unit, a guy now working federal intelligence in Houston. He gave me a secure drop location, an old airfield about 30 miles outside of town. Bring the drive tonight, he'd said. 0200 hours. Come alone. I copied the audio files onto an encrypted flash drive. I packed my gear. I left my truck in the woods and hiked to a secondary vehicle I'd stashed, a beat-up sedan I bought for cash under a fake name. The airfield was a desolate strip of cracked concrete surrounded by overgrown fields. The moon was hidden behind heavy clouds. Perfect conditions for an ambush. I knew that. My gut knew that. But I was desperate to get justice for Morgan. I parked near the old hangar, engine idling, scanning the darkness. A single car pulled up, a black sedan with government plates. A man stepped out. Tall, suit, earpiece. It looked legit. I stepped out of my car, hands visible but ready. You Agent Miller? That's right. The man said, walking toward me. You have the package? I reached into my pocket. It's all here. Everything you need to, crack. The sound of a suppressed rifle shot split the air. The side mirror of my car shattered inches from my hip. Get down, I yelled, diving behind the engine block. The agent didn't flinch. He just smiled, pulled a submachine gun from his jacket, and opened fire. It was a setup. My contact had been compromised, or he was never real to begin with. Bullets chewed up the pavement around me. I returned fire blindly, scrambling toward the thick brush at the edge of the tarmac. Another shot grazed my shoulder, a hot, searing line of pain. I didn't stop. I hit the tree line and kept running, zigzagging through the dark until the sounds of pursuit faded. I was bleeding. I was hunted, and I had nowhere to go. My motel was burned. My truck was likely found. I couldn't go to Ivy. I needed a safe house, a place no one would think to look. My parents' old farmhouse. It had been abandoned for 5 years since they passed, sitting rotting on a dirt road 10 miles north. I broke in through the back window, collapsing onto the dusty floor of the kitchen. I stripped off my jacket, gritting my teeth as I cleaned the wound with a bottle of vodka I found in the pantry. It was shallow, just a flesh wound, but it throbbed with every beat of my heart. Don't move, a voice said from the darkness of the hallway. I froze. Slowly, I reached for my pistol. Touch it and you're dead, the voice said again. A figure stepped into the moonlight filtering through the window. It was a man, holding a shotgun. He looked ragged, beard overgrown, clothes filthy, eyes wild with fear and exhaustion. It was Kyle, Morgan's ex-husband, the man who supposedly abandoned her. Kyle, I whispered. He lowered the gun slightly, squinting. Hunter, what the hell are you doing here? Hiding, he said, his voice cracking. Same as you. I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible. Hiding from who? The sheriff. Kyle let out a bitter laugh. He sank into a chair, resting the shotgun across his knees. The sheriff, he owns everything, Hunter. He owns me. What do you mean? The robbery, Kyle said, tears welling in his eyes. The night Morgan died. It wasn't two random guys. It was me. I lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar. You killed her? No, I swear. He sobbed, holding his hands up. I drove the car. Victor made me. He said he'd frame me for drug trafficking if I didn't drive his cleanup crew. I thought they were just gonna scare her. I didn't know. I shoved him back into the chair. Who pulled the trigger, Kyle? Was it Victor? Kyle shook his head violently. No, Victor was in the car with me. He was driving. He didn't go inside. Then who? Kyle looked up at me, his face pale with terror. The shooter. They came out covered in blood. They were shaking, crying. It wasn't a hitman, Hunter. It wasn't a deputy. Who was it? I warned. It was his wife, Kyle whispered. It was Giselle. She found out about the baby. She made Victor drive her there. She wanted to do it herself. I stood there stunned. The sheriff covered it up. The judge laundered the money. But the killer, the person who put 12 bullets into my pregnant sister, was the senator's daughter. The wronged wife. The political royalty. This wasn't just corruption. This was a family cleaning up its mess. And now I knew exactly who I had to hunt. The pieces finally clicked into place. It was never about a robbery. It wasn't even just about a corrupt sheriff trying to save his election. It was about rage. Pure, unadulterated female rage backed by unlimited power and money. Giselle Crane. I remembered seeing her photos in the local paper. Blonde, poised, always smiling next to her father, Senator Harlow. The perfect political wife. The kind of woman who cuts ribbons at charity events and chairs the PDA. But beneath that polished exterior was a killer cold enough to execute a pregnant woman. Kyle was still shaking in the chair, the shotgun hanging uselessly in his grip. She was screaming when she got back in the car. Kyle whispered, staring at the floor. Not screaming in fear. Screaming like she was vindicated. She kept saying, "It's gone. The problem is gone." She had blood on her designer coat. Victor. He looked terrified of her. He should be, I said, my voice low. Because now she's my problem. You can't touch her, Hunter, Kyle said, looking up with hopeless eyes. She's a Harlow. Her father has the governor on speed dial. If you go after her, the National Guard will show up. Let them come. I spent the next hour interrogating Kyle. He gave me everything. Timestamps. Locations. The layout of the sheriff's ranch. He told me about the safe in Victor's home office where they kept the insurance, recordings, ledgers, proof of the money laundering scheme that funded the senator's campaigns. Victor kept it to ensure the Harlows never turned on him. It was a house of cards held together by blackmail and blood. And I was going to burn it down. I didn't have my full kit, but I had Kyle. And more importantly, I had a plan. I wasn't going to snipe Giselle from a mile away. That was too easy, too clean. I needed a confession. I needed the world to see them for what they were. You're going to help me, I told Kyle. They'll kill me, he whimpered. They're going to kill you anyway, I said. You're a loose end. At least this way, you get a chance to redeem yourself for Morgan. He looked at me, then at the photo of Morgan still hanging on the dusty kitchen wall. He nodded slowly. But before we could move, my burner phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, putting it on speaker. Sergeant Reeves, a voice said. Smooth. Arrogant. Sheriff Victor Crane. You missed at the airfield, I said. I don't miss twice, Victor replied. But we're done playing tag in the woods. I have something you want. My stomach tightened. I don't want anything from you but your badge and your life. How about your friend? Victor asked. Pretty girl. Green eyes. Packing boxes to move to Oklahoma. Ivy. If you touch her. She's alive, Victor interrupted. For now. She's currently a guest at my ranch. We're having a lovely conversation about loyalty. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. She knows too much. Just like you. Just like your sister. Victor's voice dropped an octave. Here's the deal. You have a recording. I know you do. You bring that drive to me, and the girl walks. You try anything else. Well, let's just say accidents happen. Where and when? The old lumber yard. East of town. 1 hour. Come alone. I'll be there. I hung up and looked at Kyle. He has Ivy, I said. Kyle's face went white. The lumber yard? That place is a fortress of kill zones. It's a trap, Hunter. He's going to have deputies on every roof. I know, I said, checking the magazine of my pistol. He thinks he's setting a trap for a desperate brother. I walked over to my gear bag and pulled out the few tactical supplies I had left, smoke grenades, tripwire, a handful of flashbangs I'd liberated from my stash. He forgot he's fighting a ghost. I turned to Kyle. You're not coming with me to the lumber yard. I have a different job for you. What? While I'm busy with Victor and his goons, I said. Giselle is going to be home alone. I need you to go to the ranch. I need you to get into that safe. You want me to rob the sheriff's house? No, I said. I want you to get the leverage. Victor will have every available man at the lumber yard trying to kill me. The house will be empty. And if Giselle is there? I looked him dead in the eye. Then you tell her the ghost of Morgan Reeves sent you. I grabbed my gear and headed for the door. The rain had started again, washing away the dust on my truck. I wasn't just a soldier anymore. I was an executioner. And the trial was about to begin. The Colton County lumber yard had been dead for 10 years. It was a sprawling maze of rusted machinery, rotting wood stacks, and corrugated metal sheds. A perfect place for a murder or a war. I parked my sedan a mile out, deep in the treeline, and moved in on foot. The rain was my ally now. It masked my sound, blurred my heat signature, and turned the ground into a slush that swallowed footsteps. I didn't walk in the front gate like a hero in a movie. I ghosted through a hole in the chain-link fence on the north perimeter, moving slow, low, and silent. I had 20 minutes before the meet time. 20 minutes to turn their kill box into my playground. I scanned the layout through my scope. High ground, the main office tower overlooking the yard. That's where Victor would be. Low ground, 3 distinct ambush points behind the lumber stacks. I counted 4 deputies. Blake was there, holding an AR-15, looking nervous. 2 others I didn't recognize. And a 4th man. Bigger, tactical gear, clearly not local law enforcement. A hired gun. They were expecting me to drive right down the center lane. They had a crossfire setup that would shred a vehicle in seconds. Amateurs. I started on the perimeter. I found the first deputy, a young kid, hiding behind a forklift. He was checking his phone, the light from the screen illuminating his face. I didn't kill him. I didn't need bodies. I needed fear. I crept up behind him, slipped my arm around his throat, and applied pressure to his carotid artery. He went limp in 6 seconds. I zip-tied his hands and feet, dragged him into the shadows, and took his radio. 1 down. I moved to the next position. This was the hired gun. He was better. He was scanning his sectors, staying low. But he wasn't looking up. I climbed a stack of timber, moving across the top like a shadow. I dropped directly onto him, driving my knee into his spine as we hit the mud. The air left his lungs in a wet wheeze. Before he could draw his knife, I pistol-whipped him across the temple. He crumpled. 2 down. I rigged a flashbang to a tripwire across the main entrance path. Then I set up a distraction. The hired gun's radio, taped to a metal barrel with the transmit button wedged down, playing the static hiss of an open line. I checked my watch. 1,400 hours. Showtime. I keyed the radio I'd stolen from the kid. "Sheriff," I whispered. "I'm here." Silence. Then Victor's voice crackled back, tight with tension. "Step out where I can see you, Reeves. Hands up. Drive in the other hand." "I don't think so," I said. "I think you should send your men home before they get hurt." "This isn't a negotiation." Victor barked. "I have the girl." "I know," I said. "That's why you're still breathing." I saw movement in the main tower. A figure pacing. He was agitated. "Blake," Victor ordered. "Sweep the north side. Find him." Blake moved out from his cover, rifle raised. He was walking right toward my tripwire. I watched from the shadows, calm, breathing steady. Snap. Boom. The flashbang detonated with a blinding white light and a deafening concussive blast. Blake screamed, dropping his rifle and clutching his ears, stumbling blindly into a stack of wood. "Contact! Contact!" the remaining deputy yelled, firing wildly into the smoke. I moved while they were panicked. I flanked the 3rd deputy, coming up on his blind side. I didn't even have to strike him. I just racked the slide of my pistol right next to his ear. "Drop it," I said. He froze. He was shaking so hard his badge rattled. He dropped the gun. "Cuff yourself to the fence," I ordered. He did it without hesitation. 3 down. The yard was silent again, except for the rain and Blake's groans of pain. I had dismantled his entire security detail in 12 minutes without firing a single lethal shot. "It's just you and me now, Victor," I yelled, my voice echoing off the metal sheds. "Come out." But he didn't come out. Suddenly, a floodlight snapped on from the tower, bathing the center of the yard in blinding illumination. "You're good, Reeves," Victor's voice boomed over a PA system. "I'll give you that. You took out my pawns. But you forgot the queen." The heavy steel doors of the main warehouse rolled open with a screech of rusted gears. And there she was. Ivy was tied to a wooden chair in the center of the open doorway. She was battered, a bruise blooming on her cheek, blood on her lip. But that wasn't what stopped my heart. Strapped to her chest was a vest. Crude. Wired. Blocks of C4 taped together with a receiver blinking a slow, rhythmic red light. A bomb. I tried to be civilized. Victor's voice sneered from the tower. I tried to offer you a deal, but you had to play soldier. I stepped out of the shadows, hands raised. I had no choice. Let her go, Victor, I shouted. This is between us. It's over, he screamed. Drop the gun. Kick it away. I slowly lowered my pistol to the mud and kicked it toward the light. Good, Victor said. Now, I'm going to come down there. And you're going to hand me that drive. And then, well, then we'll see if I'm in a charitable mood. I looked at Ivy. Her eyes were wide, terrified, pleading. She shook her head slightly. Don't do it, she was saying. I looked up at the tower. Victor was behind plate glass in the foreman's office on the second floor. He was holding a remote detonator in his left hand, the same hand wearing that expensive watch. He felt safe. He felt like a god. He didn't know I still had my backup piece, a compact .380 tucked in my ankle holster. But at this distance, through glass, with a hostage rigged to blow, it was impossible, or it was supposed to be. I'm coming down, Victor announced. I saw his silhouette move away from the window, but he didn't put the detonator down. He kept his thumb hovering over the button. I had seconds. Once he was on the ground, once he had a gun to my head, it was over. I needed to change the equation. I looked at the environment, the rain, the wind, the angle, and then I saw it. Hanging from a crane arm directly above the office window was a massive steel I-beam, suspended by a rusted chain. It was swaying slightly in the wind. If I shot Victor, the dead man's switch might trigger the bomb. If I shot Ivy's restraints, he'd blow it. But if I dropped the sky on him, I slowly crouched, pretending to tie my boot. My hand brushed my ankle. Get up, Victor yelled, stepping out onto the metal catwalk, the detonator held high. Don't you move. I gripped the cold steel of the .380. I'm sorry, Ivy, I whispered. I drew. I didn't aim at Victor. I didn't aim at the bomb. I aimed at the rusted linkage of the chain holding the steel beam, 30 feet above his head. It was a shot I had no business making with a snub-nosed pistol. It was a shot that required divine intervention. I exhaled. The world went silent. The rain stopped. The fear vanished. I squeezed the trigger. The report of the .380 was a pathetic pop in the vast, rain-soaked lumber yard, a sound swallowed by the storm. For a split second, nothing happened. Victor froze on the catwalk, his face a mask of confusion, his thumb still hovering over the detonator. Then, a groan. A high-pitched, metallic screech as the rusted chain link I'd hit finally gave way. The half-ton I-beam didn't just fall. It swung down like a pendulum, a wrecking ball of pure physics. Victor's eyes went wide. He had just enough time to scream, a short, terrified bark of a sound, before the steel beam slammed into the catwalk. It didn't hit him directly. It hit the structure, collapsing the entire metal walkway under his feet. He fell. He dropped the detonator as he flailed, a tiny black box tumbling through the air. He landed on the ground below with a sickening crunch of bone and metal. His leg was twisted at an unnatural angle. He was alive, but he wasn't going anywhere. I didn't wait. I sprinted toward Ivy. The bomb's receiver was still blinking its steady red light. The fall hadn't disarmed it. Stay still. I ordered her, my voice low and steady as I knelt behind her chair. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline dump hitting me hard. I examined the vest. It was amateur hour. C4 blocks were taped together with a mess of wires leading to a simple radio receiver. No anti-tamper devices. No secondary triggers. Victor was arrogant, not a bomb maker. Hunter, Ivy whispered, her voice trembling. I thought. I know. I said, pulling out my combat knife. Just breathe with me. In, out. I sliced through the duct tape, holding the wires to the receiver. The red light kept blinking. It was still active. I needed to cut the power source. I found the battery pack, a bundle of D-cells taped to the side. With one precise cut, I severed the lead wires. The red light went out. Ivy let out a sob, her whole body slumping forward in the chair. I cut the ropes binding her wrists and ankles. She collapsed into my arms, burying her face in my shoulder. "He was going to kill me," she cried. "He kept saying he was going to kill me and send you a picture. He's not killing anyone else," I said, pulling her to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. I retrieved my pistol from the mud and walked over to where Victor lay groaning. His leg was shattered. Bone protruded from the skin. The expensive watch on his wrist was smashed, the face spiderwebbed with cracks. He looked up at me, his face pale with pain and shock. You son of a bitch. You broke my leg." "That's the least of your problems," I said, pointing the gun at his head. "Go ahead." He spat, blood trickling from his lips. "Kill me. My wife will have you hunted down and skinned alive. You think you won? This isn't over." "I know," I said, and in that moment, I made a decision. Killing him here was too easy. It was what he wanted. It would turn him into a martyr, a cop killed in the line of duty by a crazed vigilante. It wouldn't get justice for Morgan. "Ivy," I said, not taking my eyes off Victor. "Take my truck. It's a mile north of here, in the woods. Here are the keys. Drive to the state police barracks in Tyler. Don't stop for anyone. Tell them everything." "I'm not leaving you," she said. "Yes, you are," I insisted. "This part is my job. Go." She hesitated, then squeezed my arm and ran, disappearing into the darkness. I knelt beside Victor and grabbed him by the collar. "You're right. This isn't over." I hauled him to his feet, ignoring his screams of pain as his broken leg dangled uselessly. I was a man possessed. I dragged him through the mud, past his deputies who were still cuffed or unconscious. I threw him into the back of his own patrol car. I wasn't taking him to a hospital. I wasn't taking him to jail. I was taking him to the town square. I drove through the streets of Colton Springs, siren blaring, lights flashing. People came out of their houses, staring in disbelief as the sheriff's own car sped past. I screeched to a halt in the center of town, right next to the flagpole and the war memorial. I pulled Victor out of the car and threw him onto the wet grass. A crowd was already starting to gather. Whispers turned into gasps. "What's going on?" someone yelled. "Is that the sheriff?" I stood over him, my pistol still in my hand. "This is what happens when you murder a pregnant woman." I roared, my voice raw. "This is what happens when you try to kill your own child." A woman in the crowd screamed. "He's lying." Victor choked out from the ground. "He's insane. He attacked us." My burner phone rang. It was Kyle. "I'm in," he said, his voice a frantic whisper. "I'm in the house. I found the safe. Giselle isn't here." "Good," I said. "Send it." "Send what?" "You have the files. The recordings. The ledgers. Send them to every news station in Texas. Send them to the FBI. Send them to the senator's political rivals. Burn it all down, Kyle. Now." There was a pause. Then Kyle said, "It's done." As if on cue, a dozen phones in the crowd started buzzing at once. A man near the front gasped, holding his phone up. "Oh my God, it's a news alert." Another car screeched to a halt. It wasn't a local deputy. It was a state trooper. Then another, and another. But the last car to arrive was a black sedan. A man in a tailored suit stepped out. It was Judge Felix Preston. He wasn't smiling. He was holding a pair of handcuffs. Victor saw him, and a look of relief washed over his face. "Felix, thank God. Arrest this psycho." But the judge didn't walk toward me. He walked straight to Victor. "Victor Crane," he said, his voice cold and official. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." Victor stared at him, bewildered. "What?" "Felix, what are you doing?" "It's me." The judge looked at me, then back at Victor. "You should have known better than to keep records, you fool." He snapped the cuffs on Victor's wrists. "Your political protection just evaporated. It was over. Or so I thought." I stood in the center of the town square, the rain finally slowing to a drizzle, watching the pillars of this corrupt town crumble in real time. Judge Felix Preston handcuffing his own co-conspirator wasn't justice. It was survival. He was cutting off a dying limb to save the body. I saw it in his eyes. He thought if he served up the sheriff, he could keep his own robe. He was wrong. You're not arresting him, I said, stepping forward. You're fleeing the scene of the crime. The judge stiffened. Sergeant Reeves, you've done your country a service today, but let law enforcement handle it from here. Which law enforcement? I asked, raising my voice so the crowd could hear. The kind that takes bribes from drug money, or the kind that helps cover up murders? I pulled out my phone. Kyle had done his job perfectly. The link he sent out wasn't just to the news stations. It was a mass broadcast. Every phone in the square was pinging with notifications. Audio files. Scanned bank ledgers. Photos of offshore account numbers with the judge's signature next to them. Check your email, Judge, I said. He pulled out his phone. His face went gray. He looked at me with pure hatred, realizing his career and his freedom were gone. Before he could speak, more sirens wailed. These were different. Black SUVs. Federal agents. The real ones this time. They swarmed the square, weapons drawn, shouting commands. They weren't there for me. They were there for the men in suits. I watched as agents tackled the judge to the ground. I watched them load Victor, screaming in pain, into an ambulance under heavy guard. The townspeople stood in stunned silence, realizing their quiet little community had been a criminal enterprise all along. It felt like victory. It felt like closure. But something was missing. Giselle. She wasn't at the ranch when Kyle broke in. She wasn't at the sheriff's office. She wasn't here. I grabbed a young FBI agent by the arm as he passed. Where is Giselle Crane? We have teams looking for her, he said. Senator Harlow's daughter is a high-priority suspect. We believe she's fleeing the state. She's not fleeing, I said, a cold realization settling in my gut. She's finishing the job. I ran to my truck. I didn't need to ask where she was going. There was only one place left. The only place that mattered. The cemetery. I drove like a madman, blowing through stop signs, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. When I skidded to a halt at the cemetery gates, I saw her car. A silver Mercedes, parked haphazardly on the grass. The driver's door was open. I drew my weapon and ran toward the family plot. Giselle was standing over Morgan's grave. She wasn't crying. She wasn't praying. She was holding a gasoline can. She was dressed in immaculate white, her blonde hair perfectly styled, looking like an angel of death. She was pouring fuel onto the fresh dirt of my sister's grave, onto the tiny mound of earth where the baby lay. Stop, I yelled, leveling my gun at her. She turned slowly. Her eyes were empty, soulless. She smiled, a terrifying, serene expression. She doesn't deserve to rest, Giselle said softly. She ruined everything. My marriage, my reputation, my life. You ruined your own life, I said, walking closer. You murdered a pregnant woman, Giselle. You shot her 12 times. I was removing a stain. She spat, her voice suddenly venomous. Do you know what it's like? To be perfect? To have everyone look at you and see perfection? And then this nobody. This white trash waitress comes along and thinks she can take what's mine. She didn't want him, I said. She tried to leave. It doesn't matter, she screamed, throwing the empty gas can aside. She pulled a lighter from her pocket. She carries his blood. That baby carried his blood. I couldn't let it exist. I won't let it exist. Not even in the ground. She flicked the lighter. A small flame danced in the gloom. Drop it, I warned. Or what? She laughed. You'll shoot the senator's daughter? Do you know who my father is? I'll be out on bail by dinner. I'll plead insanity. I'll go to a nice hospital for a few months. And then I'll come back here and finish this. She was right. The system was broken. Money bought freedom. Power bought silence. If I arrested her, she might walk. If I killed her, I became the monster. But I wasn't just a soldier anymore. I was a brother. I holstered my gun. Giselle blinked, confused. What are you doing? I'm not going to shoot you, I said. And you're not going to burn that grave. I took a step forward. She flinched, holding the lighter out like a weapon. Stay back. Go ahead, I said. Drop it. Burn the grass. Burn the dirt. It won't change anything. The whole world knows what you did, Giselle. The audio files are out. The photos. The financial records. Your father just resigned on live TV. Your husband is in federal custody. You have no money. You have no power. You have nothing. Her face crumbled. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a horrifying realization. She looked at her phone, vibrating on the gravestone where she'd left it. It was buzzing with alerts. She wasn't fear-mongering anymore. She was just a pathetic, broken woman standing in the mud. The lighter shook in her hand. "No," she whispered. "No, Daddy will fix it." "Nobody can fix this," I said. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. She heard them too. She looked at the flame, then at me, then at the grave. For a second, I thought she was going to drop it on herself. But she didn't have the courage. She let the lighter fall into a puddle, extinguishing the flame with a hiss. She sank to her knees, sobbing, not for Morgan, not for the baby, but for herself, for the loss of her perfect, fake life. I walked over and kicked the lighter away. I didn't cuff her. I didn't touch her. I just stood guard over my sister's grave until the FBI arrived. As they dragged her away, screaming and thrashing, I looked down at the wet earth. "It's okay, Morgan," I whispered. "They can't hurt you anymore." I thought the war was over. I thought the enemy was defeated. But as I walked back to my truck, exhausted, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of a letter, handwritten, dated 2 days before Morgan died. "Hunter, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. There's something I never told you. Something about the baby." I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. The handwriting was hers. But the words. This wasn't over. Not even close. I sat in the cab of my truck, the blue lights of police cruisers reflecting off the windshield, staring at the photo on my phone. My hands, which had been steady through gunfights and interrogations, were trembling. I recognized the handwriting immediately. The loops of the Y, the sharp slant of the T. It was Morgan's. I drove to the only place she could have hidden the original letter. When we were kids, we had a dead drop, a loose floorboard in the attic of our parents' old farmhouse. We used to hide comic books and secret notes there. If she wanted me to find something after she was gone, that's where it would be. The farmhouse was quiet when I arrived. I climbed the creaky stairs to the attic, the smell of dust and old wood triggering memories I didn't have the strength to process. I found the board. I pried it up. There it was. A white envelope, sealed with tape. For Hunter. I tore it open. Inside was a 3-page letter and a bank deposit slip. "Hunter, I know what you think. You think I'm a victim. You think I got caught up with a bad man and couldn't get out. And that's true. Victor is a monster. But I'm not innocent, big brother." I sat on the dusty floor, reading by the light of my phone. I didn't just stumble onto their money laundering scheme. I went looking for it. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew Victor would never leave his wife. I knew I'd be a single mom in a town that hates me. So I made a choice. A bad choice. I blackmailed him. My breath caught in my throat. I told him I needed $500,000. Not for me. For you. I stopped reading. The silence of the house pressed in on me. For me? The VA denied your last surgery request, Hunter. I saw the letters you hid in your drawer when you were home on leave. I saw the medical bills piling up. I knew about the shrapnel in your spine that the doctors said would paralyze you in 5 years if you didn't get that experimental treatment in Germany. You were too proud to ask for help. You were going to let yourself rot because you didn't want to be a burden. Tears blurred my vision. She knew. I had never told anyone about the diagnosis. I thought I had hidden it perfectly, but she was my sister. She always saw through me. So I pushed him. I told him if he didn't pay up, I'd go to the FBI with everything I knew about the rehab center. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was protecting my family. I didn't realize until it was too late that I was signing my own death warrant. I'm sorry, Hunter. I'm so sorry. I just wanted you to walk at my wedding one day. I just wanted you to be able to chase your niece around the yard. I gambled with my life to save yours. If I lose, please don't hate me. Just take care of the baby. The letter ended there. I stared at the paper until the words swam together. She wasn't a helpless victim. She was a lioness. She walked into the den of wolves, unarmed and pregnant, and demanded a future for her brother. She died because she loved me too much to let me suffer. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I doubled over, gasping for air. All this time, I thought I was the protector. I thought I was the hero. But she was the one who made the sacrifice. She was the one who took the bullet. I looked at the bank deposit slip included in the envelope. It was dated 3 days before she died. A deposit of $50,000 into a trust account in my name. The first installment. She had won the first round. And it got her killed. I wiped my face, pocketing the letter. A new kind of resolve settled in my chest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. I left the farmhouse and drove back to town. The sun was coming up, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. I went straight to the county jail. I needed to see her. Giselle. I flashed my ID and the federal agents let me through. They were still processing her. She was sitting in an interrogation room, still wearing her muddy white dress, looking small and broken. When I walked in, she didn't look up. Did you know? I asked. She flinched. Know what? That she was trying to save me. Giselle looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. What are you talking about? Morgan wasn't trying to take your husband, I said. She was trying to pay for my surgery. She blackmailed Victor to save her brother's life. Giselle stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. A strange expression crossed her face, something like horror, mixed with confusion. Victor told me. She stammered. Victor told me she wanted to be the sheriff's wife. He said she was going to publicize the affair to humiliate me. He said she was laughing at me. He lied, I said. He lied to manipulate you. He turned your jealousy into a weapon so he wouldn't have to get his own hands dirty. Giselle let out a low, keen sound. She buried her face in her hands. I killed her for nothing, she sobbed. I killed a baby for nothing. Not for nothing, I said coldly. For him. I turned to the two-way mirror. I knew the federal prosecutors were listening. I want a deal, I said to the glass. The door opened. A suit walked in. We don't make deals with vigilantes, Sergeant. I'm not asking for me, I said. I want Victor Crane in general population. No protective custody. No solitary. He goes to the state pen with the general inmates. Let everyone know he was a cop. The agent looked at Giselle, sobbing at the table, then back at me. He nodded slowly. We can recommend that to the judge. Good. I looked at Giselle one last time. You're going to prison for the rest of your life? I said. But you have one chance to do something decent. Testify against him. Tell them everything. Destroy him completely. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. She nodded. I will. I promise. I walked out of the jail into the morning light. The air felt cleaner. The storm had passed. My phone buzzed. It was Ivy. I'm at the hospital. They checked me out. I'm okay. Where are you? I typed back. I'm done. I'm coming to get you. I got in my truck. I had one more stop to make before I left this town forever. I drove to the bank. I withdrew the $50,000 Morgan had died to give me. I wasn't going to use it for surgery. I'd live with the pain. It was a reminder. I knew exactly where that money needed to go. I stood at the edge of the newly dedicated playground in the center of Colton Springs. The old, rusted equipment was gone. In its place were bright yellow slides, sturdy swing sets, and a soft rubber floor. A bronze plaque by the entrance read, the Emma and Morgan Reeves Memorial Park. I used the $50,000 to build it. Every cent. It wasn't the surgery Morgan wanted for me, but it was the legacy she deserved. Now, instead of a place of corruption and silence, this town would hear the sound of children laughing. It had been 6 months since the trial. Giselle pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. She didn't fight it. During her sentencing, she turned to me in the gallery and mouthed, I'm sorry. The judge gave her life without parole. Victor fought until the end. He tried to blame everything on his wife, on the judge, on me. But when Giselle took the stand, she dismantled him piece by piece. She revealed every bribe, every threat, every lie. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. He got 3 consecutive life sentences. And thanks to the deal I made, he was sent to Huntsville maximum security, general population. Last I heard, he spends his days in terror, looking over his shoulder. Justice isn't always a bullet. Sometimes, it's letting a man live long enough to realize he's nothing. I walked over to the swing set where Ivy was pushing a little boy, her younger brother, Leo. When she saw me, she smiled. It was a real smile this time. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She wasn't running to Oklahoma anymore. She had taken a job managing the new park. She was staying. "Hey, stranger," she said, stopping the swing. "Hey," I said. "How's the new hip?" She laughed. "Better than your shoulder." My shoulder still ached when it rained. My back still hurt every morning. The shrapnel was still there, a ticking clock in my spine. But I could walk. I could stand. And I could protect the people who mattered. "You leaving today?" she asked, her voice softening. "Yeah," I said. "Truck's packed." "Where to?" "West," I said. "I got a call from an old buddy in Montana. Says he needs help running a ranch for veterans. Guys with baggage." Figured I might fit in. Ivy nodded, looking down at her brother. "We're gonna miss you, Hunter. This town. It's better because of you." "It's better because of her," I said, nodding toward the plaque. I walked over to the memorial. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only thing I had left of my old life. My Marine Corps sniper patch. The Ghost Unit insignia. I pressed it into the soft earth beneath the plaque. I wasn't a sniper anymore. I wasn't a ghost. I was just a brother who kept his promise. "Goodbye, Morgan," I whispered. "You did good." I walked back to my truck, the gravel crunching under my boots. The air smelled like rain and pine needles. For the first time in 22 years, I didn't check my 6. I didn't scan the rooftops. I just got in, started the engine, and drove. As I passed the town limits sign, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Colton Springs was disappearing behind me, shrinking until it was just a speck on the horizon. I had come here looking for revenge. I found something harder. I found the truth. And the truth is, you can't shoot your way to peace. You have to build it, one swing set, one confession, one act of forgiveness at a time. Morgan saved my life in ways she never intended. She taught me that the strongest weapon isn't a rifle. It's love. A love so fierce it burns down cities and builds playgrounds from the ashes. The road ahead was long. My back would always hurt. The memories would always be there. But as the sun broke through the clouds, hitting the windshield, I realized something. I was finally coming home. Final thought for you. Have you ever made a sacrifice for someone you loved, only to realize they were protecting you the whole time? Family secrets can heal us or destroy us. It all depends on when we find them. If this story touched your heart, or if you felt that anger and relief along with Hunter, please take a second to hit that like button. It helps us share these stories with more people who need to hear them. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and join our community. We're building something real here. I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Represents your city or country in the comments. And one last question for you guys. What kind of story do you want to hear next? Are you into these gritty military revenge thrillers? Or do you want something more focused on psychological family drama? Or maybe a mystery with a huge twist? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to bring you the stories you crave. Until the next epic tale, take care of yourselves and hold your loved ones close.